This is my Anatomy and Physiology assignment 2 by myself, Callum Hill. So basically I'm going to be talking about classifications of joints. I'm going to be talking about different types of bones and also more muscle actions that's going to be involved in this assignment. So I'm going to start with 3 classifications of joint, which entail fibrous, synovial and cartilaginous. Fibrous joint is only located within the skull, for which the bones are formed together and therefore the most mobile classification of the joint. Synovial, an articular surface that is covered with hyaline cartilage, which is also known as avascular, non-nervous and elastic. It is also lubricated with synovial fluid, which allows forms of cartilage being slippery for free movement. And lastly, cartilaginous is another type of joint that is a piece of cartilage that is located between the bones, which allow to hold the bones together, which makes a joint. In addition, cartilages are further divided into the following subtypes, which are epiphysis, diaphysis, metaphysis, and epiphyseal plate of cartilage. So, moving on to you've got your ball and socket, your hinge, pivot, condyloid, gland, and saddle. So again, these are all different types of joint classifications. So to start with ball and socket, this is a classification of synovial joints that are able to enjoy free sense of movement in the body. Hip joints are the only ball and socket joints within the human body due to musculature for movement and supporting flexible joints. Hinge, which is a synovial joint that is linked the ankle, elbow, and knee joints. So hinge joints are equally formed between 2 or more bones, only moving along one axis to flex or extend. Pivot, which is a freely movable joint that allows only rotary movement around a single axis. Pivot joints also provide for twisting movements of bones of the forearm or the radius or the ulna against the upper arm. Condyloid, which is a bone, is the oval projection or a hollow space directly opposite a placed bone, which is the purpose for movement in the joint to become possible to move, although it cannot rotate freely. Gliding, which is a common type of synovial joint, which is formed between bones that are flat. The aim of this is to glide past another bone, going any direction along the plane of the joint. A saddle joint, which is a joint where only one of the bones is shaped like a saddle, with another bone resting on it like a rider on a horse. The aim of the saddle joint is to provide stability to the bones, while also providing more flexibility than a hinge, which is similar to a condyloid joint. So, moving on to the long bone, so I'm going to start with the histology of the long bone, which is also known as the locomotor system. Skeletal muscles work within the conjunction within the skeletal to provide support. In terms of this, is the skeleton helps to support and protect an appendicular skeleton involving movement. In terms of the functions of bone types, which entail long, short, sesamoid, flat, regular, and irregular bones as well. In terms of the compact and the cancellous bone, the compact bone consists of hollow tubes called lamella, are made of collagen fibres. In addition, these tubes have a collagen running opposite ways to enhance bone strength, whereas the cancellous bone consists of honeycomb, which affects more flexibility than the compact bone. Moving on to the bone and growth development. So in terms of the bone development, the formation of bone during fetal stage of development allows an intramembranous ossification, an endochondral ossification. A secondary ossification occurs after birth and allows the epiphysis of long bones and the extremities of irregular and flat bones. However, after this, bones are remodeled throughout life to be able to regulate calcium homeostasis and the repairment of microdamaged bones prior to the shape of the skeleton during growth. As you can see, diaphysis equals the central part of any long bone, and the epiphysis is the rounded ends of long bones at its joints with adjacent bones. Moving on to the cartilage, so the histology of this. It's a strong flexible tissue, allows compression and the ability to rotate. And then it goes on just to mention about hyaline, fibro, and elastic. So I'll start with hyaline. It's the weakest type, which is found in the ribs, nose, and trachea. Fibro, which is the strongest type, which is found in the ligaments, joint capsules, and discs. And lastly, the elastic, which allows shape and freely movable, found in the ear, larynx, and lastly, epiglottis. The ligaments. There are dense bands of collagen fibres with irregular alignment, which also offer tensile strength. Cells are referred to as fibroblasts, which enables to strengthen during exercise. And now, according to research, Marieb, 1995, cites that the ability to freely move can stretch up to at least 6% before any form of tear. Moving on to the tendons, so this is the most connective form of muscle tissue to the bone. It's also the link between the muscular and skeletal systems, which also transmit the force between the muscle contraction through the bone. It also allows to provide elastic energy to be able to help actions such as running. Lastly, training will be able to develop tendon stiffness. The areolar tissue, so according to the histology, the tissue is the most common type of connective tissue, which is a more like a loose mesh-like structure. It's soft and gel-like, which has the primary purpose of being able to hold organs in place and offers support, strength, and elasticity. This theory, I'm going to talk about muscle actions now. Muscle action is able to show forces within the muscle which affect the length of the muscle itself, for which skeletal muscles can be performed by 3 different main muscle actions, which are concentric muscle, so this muscle exhibits tension and generally creates muscle forces to be able to push, pull, throw, and kicking. The isometric muscle, which is, again, the muscle exhibits tension and also creates muscle forces to stabilise joints. And lastly, the eccentric muscle, so this again is an action that exhibits tension and also creates muscle forces to be able to control speed, which is used by acceleration by gravity. The proprioceptors, so the aim of this is during muscle action, with it being located in the joint, muscles and tendons will detect to increase more tension and pressure, which is followed up by something called subconsciously. So it's a process of subconscious. So muscle spindles are primary proprioceptors within the muscle that allow sensitivity to changes through that muscle length, which allow to stretch your legs whilst walking or arms being reached for something. Golgi tendon organs. So this is a particular muscle action that allows to sense information as received from the organs, and tendons that sense it. Well, again, that senses tension. It is the tendon organ that informs you how much tension the muscle is exerting. Muscle spindle, so this is a form of proprioceptor, which is a sensory organ that receives information from muscles that will also sense movement, such as stretching and speed. During stretching, there's a signal that passes through into the nervous system that would instantly react to stretching, not as much. Stretch shortening cycle. So according to Science and Sport, the stretch shortening cycle enables to refer to pre-stretch or counter-movement actions that will enforce observation during human movements, such as jumping. So this is basically telling me that if you ever want to do a physical exercise, you have to stretch beforehand. Pre-stretch enables to instantly warm the muscles that you are stretching to produce more force and the ability to move quicker. Sliding filament theory. So the sliding filament theory enables to produce muscle fibers at a basic level of myofibrils. In addition, this will contain actin and myosin filaments. These filaments slide in and out between each other to form a muscle contraction, which is referred to as the sliding filament theory. Myofibril is a cylinder-type feature which runs through the length of the muscle fiber, which contains actin and myosin. Sarcomere, which is a unit of myofibril, which divides into I, A, and H bands. The actin, which is a thin protein filament, which protrusions, which is known as binding site. So the aim of actin binds things together. Myosin, slightly opposite to actin, it's a thick protein filament known as myosin heads. Tropmyosin, which is an actin binding protein, so again it relates to actin, so it binds things together, which enables to regulate muscle contraction. Lastly, troponin, which is a complex of 3 proteins which is attached to tropomyosin. So basically, this theory basically tells me that a nerve impulse that is sent from the brain to pass a message to the muscles to be able to contract or to be able to get a response. This then triggers an action potential at the junction, which is located between the nerves and the muscles. A chemical called acetylcholine, which theoretically helps the action potential to pass over the junction to carry out a release, that carries the action potential to the junction. Once this has happened, the action potential It passes through the transverse tubules towards the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which stimulate. Motor neuron originate within the spinal cord and muscle fibers in order to facilitate muscle contraction. That allows muscle spindles in order to modify proprioceptive sensitivity. It is a specialized nerve, initially transmits electrical impulses from the spinal cord within the muscle to enable the muscle contraction. So basically this is telling me that the brain passes down the message to the muscles. So you've got your muscle fibers to be able to contract your muscles, to be able to develop an electrical impulse to the contraction. And these are my referencing pages. Thank you very much.